Hey everybody, it's Mike from Cornfield Customs and welcome back to the channel. So today I need to knock out an aluminum Model A Coupe roof insert for a 28-29 Model A. So stick around in this episode while I show you how to do the layout, the shaping on the power hammer, and we will get this thing knocked out. All right, so I've got our blank piece of aluminum here. There's no layout lines or anything going on it yet. And then I have our main pattern sitting over there. So the first thing I need to do is get this material clean. Cleanliness on your material is going to be really beneficial. It gets all the oil, grease, and dirt off before we do any layout or get into shaping. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some isopropyl rubbing alcohol, get this thing cleaned up, and then we can lay out our master pattern onto the blank here, and we can get started on shaping this Model A roof insert. So first things first, we're going to get some rubbing alcohol on our rag here that we're gonna wipe it down. I like to use rubbing alcohol over like acetone or lacquer thinner. I don't like the smell of lacquer thinner or acetone, so rubbing alcohol, to me, smells a little bit better, doesn't burn, and I feel that it just gets the panel cleaner and leaves less residue. So what I've got here is just a Just Right plunger can. You guys may have seen these in other videos, and it's just full of alcohol, and you put your rag on top. So I'll do it without the rag so you can see it. It just pumps the alcohol up into it. We're gonna get our rag nice and saturated, and then we'll come over to the panel and get to cleaning. So we'll just get everything wiped down, nice and clean. So this is the first step of my cleaning process on panels. If you guys have seen some of my other videos, you'll know that I'm really big on getting all the oil and stuff off of the material before I do any layout. So the first thing is we'll scrub this down with alcohol, and then we'll come back over with some glass cleaner just to make sure that we've got everything nice and clean. So step one of getting this panel clean with the alcohol is done. We'll let this dry for a minute, and I'll walk over and get some fresh paper towels and glass cleaner to do stage two of cleaning. All right, so I've got some glass cleaner here, and we'll just get everything nice and coated. All right, so stage two is done, but there's more. So you can see just how dirty our towel is after we've cleaned it with alcohol and glass cleaner. So just to ensure that I get it clean to where tape or our marker will not smudge, we're gonna clean it with glass cleaner one more time. So for me, getting the panel absolutely clean is critical. For guys that have taken my class, you know this is how I do everything. This is always the first thing I do to the sheet metal before we do any layout work. So let me grab some more paper towels. We'll clean it for the third time, and then we're good to go ahead and start the layout. All right, we'll let that dry a little bit, and then we're ready to start laying out our roof insert based on our master pattern, and I'll grab that and we'll get going. Now that everything's nice and clean, we can take our standard pattern that I use for laying out Model A Coupe roof inserts. I have one of these for each type of roof insert that I do. This way, this is just my standard template. I'm not having to make a paper pattern, lay everything out off of that. I keep these and they've got holes drilled in them, so it's easier to lay out my grid pattern. It doesn't take as long, saves time, saves energy. So we'll get this thing centered up. I'll come in and I'll mark all of our holes. And I have written on here that this blank is cut for a 30-31, or if I need to use a 28-29, I have to add 2 inches to the front and 3/4 the rest of the way around. So I'll get this thing centered on there where I've got enough room to do that, and we'll get everything laid out, then we can start trimming it and get to shaping. I wanted to take a quick second here in this video to give you guys a couple little tips and tricks that might help you with snipping and trimming out all of your panels. As you can see, I like to do everything with tin snips. And one of the reasons I like to do that is I find it a lot more precise and I can stay on my layout line a lot easier than I can with a Beverly shear or electric snips or an air nibbler. So that's one of the big things. I like to use hand snips for all my final trimming, whether it be cutting out the blank or final fitting to the car. So I want to tell you a little bit of a trick that I have found over the years with holding your snips. These are Midwest brand snips. These are my go-to hand snips, and they have been for many years. Most people want to hold their snips in this direction. But what I found is when you do that, it puts your upper arm in a really weird tense state. All my muscles are tight and it doesn't even feel comfortable holding the snip, let alone squeezing it. But as you can see how I operate them, I flip the snip over and run it essentially upside down from what most people think is the standard use position. And that puts my arm in more of a relaxed state and I can get right up on it and I can follow that line. If I had it the other way, it's very uncomfortable to be down here. So with that, hopefully this little tip of rotating your snips over will make it more comfortable and easier to cut out your panels with snips when doing intricate trimming. So what goes in with this is also using the right Sharpie. I prefer to use an ultra-fine Sharpie. That way our line is extremely small, which reduces our margin of error. For you guys that have been watching the channel for a long time, you know how picky I am when it comes to margin of error and aiming small and missing small. The more we can reduce that margin of error, the closer all of our panel work and our fitment will be. So I don't like to use thicker Sharpies, especially ones that have a worn tip on them, for anything that's going to be a trimmed edge. I really prefer to use the ultrafine Sharpie. That way I can aim small and miss small. If I get off the line a little bit, you're only talking a very, very small mark that you have to readjust to. That's easily able to be filed out after the fact. But if you're using a fat Sharpie, that margin of error is greater, that's more file work, and I feel it's just easier with the ultrafine, and I kind of stick with that. So those are a couple little tips that hopefully help you guys on your panel work, like I said, with the snips and with the markers. Next up, we're going to file all of our edges just to knock the burr off. I'm using one of my signature billet file holders with a Vixen file in there, just to knock the burrs off, top side and bottom side, so I get a nice smooth surface, nothing that's going to cut my hand. I'm going to get to filing and then we can get to shaping this panel. So let's get to it. So before we go over and get the power hammer set up to shape this piece, I wanted to talk a little bit about my grid layout, why I do it this way, and what it's about. So for some of you guys that have seen my other low crown panels, this is going to be a little bit of a recap on that, but for the new people that are just getting to check out the channel, I wanted to cover that just so there's no questions about what the grid means, why I do it. So I'm going to tell you all about it. So what I like to do is I make a grid pattern on our panel, and this would be the center block here, the center of our grid, and that is based in the highest crown section of the roof. So if we're doing a deck lid or a door, any of that stuff, the center of our grid pattern is going to be in the highest crown area of the panel. And from there, I grid everything out in 2-inch increments, working my way out towards the edge. I like to do 2-inch spacing because I've tried it a little bit farther apart and I will get ripples in between our grid lines, and under 2 inches, we don't get those ripples, but it's a lot of extra work. So I've just found that 2 inches seems to be the sweet spot to get the layout spacing to where you don't get waves in between your starts and stops. So what happens on low crown panels like a roof insert or a door is you need a lot more stretch in the middle of the panel than you do at the outside edge of the panel. That's how you get that nice low crown compound shape. So with gridding it, I start in the middle and we will power hammer across the center, all the way down, and we'll come back up, and then we'll jump out to number 1, and we'll repeat that process, crossing over the previously gone over section. So if we're in 1, we'll go all the way across 1, crossing the center, down to the bottom, come back up, then we'll jump out to 2, and we'll go all the way across 2, all the way across 1 again, and the center again. And what that does is that allows us, at this point, we will have gone over grid 2 once, grid 1 twice, and the center 3 times. So that gives us that more stretch in the middle that we need on the panel as we work. So then we're not doing the whole panel all at once, which that'll kind of make the panel feel loose and the shape's not right in there, and you have to chase that around. So I like to be a little bit more methodical about it, lay out in a grid where all of my shape needs to be and this pattern to build complex low crown shape very rapidly. This allows me to keep track of where I am as well as build shape faster. So if somebody walks in, I have an emergency, power goes out, whatever, I can write down that I left off in grid 2 or 5 or wherever I left off, and that allows me to come right back to that section and I'll know where I left off. So hopefully that makes sense onto why I grid it out. If you're curious about it, check out some of the other metal shaping videos. I have a lot of roof inserts and low crown panels, and I think I even have a dedicated shorter video that just talks about the grid pattern, why I do it, how I lay it out. And you saw it earlier in this video where I used our universal template to lay out all the corner points for our grid. So hopefully that clears up some information about the grid panel for a lot of the newcomers to the channel, and just kind of reaffirms that same information for you guys that have been watching for a lot longer. So from here, we need to get the machine set up, and I also need to pull out our roof buck. So back here tucked in the corner, I have a roof buck right there behind me for Model A Coupes. So I need to get that pulled out, set the hammer up, and we can get ready to shape. So I'm gonna pull that out here in a minute, but let me talk about the machine. So what we're gonna do is we're going to have a flat top upper tool in here. So you can see that says flat top. And right now we have a 24-inch lower radius tool in here. I need to switch this out to be a 36. So I gotta change that lower tool. So we'll go ahead and drop the lower tool post. I'll get the handle and I'll pop this out. And we're going to be running about, we're at 2.5, yeah, right about 2.5 on our stroke. I'm gonna turn that up just a little bit. And like I said, we're gonna change that tool out. We're about 4.5 on our RPM. So that's good there. So other than changing out that lower tool and readjusting the tool gap, we are set on the hammer. So it's about ready to be fired up. So let me grab the roof buck, get that set up on the table, and change out this tool, and we can go ahead and get to shaping. All right, got the tool changed out. I showed you that it was a 36-inch lower. I adjusted the tool gap. So 36 lower, flat top upper, and our tool gap right now is about 3/16 to 1/4 inch, which is my go-to setup for running the hammer, whether I'm doing radial stretch, linear stretch, or thumbnail shrinking. So that's where we are with the setup on the hammer. I drug out the roof buck, and that is here. So it's ready. It's got our sweep numbers on there. So if we want to check it with sweeps, it's a number 9 this direction and a number 15 there, and it kind of fades off here in the back. So you know what that means? It means it's time to fire this power hammer up and start shaping. So I'm going to turn the rotophase on. I'm going to put my leather shaping apron on just to help protect myself a little bit. And we are going to lubricate the panel front and back. And I'll be using my standard panel lube. It's over here in another one of these smaller pump cans. It is 50/50 ATF and mineral spirits. It just seems to be kind of the go-to for most people in the shaping industry. So that's what I use. I've had great luck with it. So we'll get our aluminum panel lubricated on both sides. I'll get my apron on, and we will get to shaping on the hammer. All right, so we're done with our first full pass, and I got it laid here on the buck. The front's a little loose, like I can feel there's a little bit of a low spot here, but overall it fits pretty nice. The edges aren't super loose. It just needs a little bit of fine tuning and refinement work. Mainly, like I said, it's this low spot kind of right here that I'm feeling. It's kind of right there, if you can see that circle in the oil. Just that's a little bit low, so if I raise that up, I think it'll tighten everything up a little bit. But I'm gonna go ahead and check it with sweeps to verify that is a low spot and make sure there's not anything else I need to worry about on the panel. But before I get into that, I did want to talk about what's going on while I'm shaping. So I'm going to show you the dies on the hammer again. So there are our upper, which is flat, and our lower is 36. So what that means is it has a 36-inch radius in all directions. So while we're hammering that, the top anvil comes down and makes contact, and it is called a radial stretch. So as that comes down and hits, that force spreads out evenly in every and all direction, giving us our radial stretch. And that's how you achieve these low crown panels that move both directions at the same time. You're going to use that radial stretch to build this compound shape. So I know that's not a super deep dive into radial stretch, but I wanted to give you just a basic understanding of kind of how the dies are creating this shape. But like I said, I don't know if you can see it if I draw it in the oil, but you know, you'll have a circular contact patch and all of the force will spread out evenly in every direction. So that's why you can get away with going left to right, forward to back, circles. There's no real desired direction since everything is moving outward from the contact patch. That's kind of what we're doing with radial stretch, and hopefully that clears up some of the happenings of what's going on while I'm running this through the power hammer. So I'm gonna check this with some sweeps, make some better notes, and we'll get this thing fine-tuned and get it wrapped up. All right, so it's now Saturday morning. Yesterday, you saw me do all the initial shaping, and we came in and I wrapped up the day doing our just fine-tuning, nitpicking a few things. I had to cut it a little short last night just because I had garage night. I can talk more about what garage night is in a future episode, but pretty much the first Friday of every month, I open the shop up to the public from 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock for people to come in and see what I'm doing. So I was filming and working right up to the point people started showing up. So I didn't get to film that I wrapped everything up on the skin yesterday. So at this point, I'm really happy with the way everything fits. It lays, the reflection looks really nice. So it's still covered in oil. So the next stage is we're gonna take more isopurple alcohol, clean everything, top side, bottom side, make it nice and clean, and then I'm gonna go over everything with a red Scotch-Brite on a DA pad, just to help take out some of these little scratches and anything that's in the surface of the aluminum. So it's pretty much wrapped up other than going over it with the Scotch-Brite. One thing I like to do is, well, as I mentioned, this is an aluminum skin and it's going to be louvered. So when I make a skin that I know is going to be louvered, I will overstretch it just a little bit. That will help it settle down a little bit when you put the louvers in. I've noticed when I send things out to be louvered, if they're the correct shape to match the roof profile and then you have it louvered, it looks a little flat. So I started overshaping them just a little bit. That way, when the louvers are put in and it stretches the opening and kind of tightens everything down, it'll pull some of that shape back out and it'll end up right about where it needs to be to keep the flow front to back and left to right. So I did overshape this one just a little bit to account for the louvers that will be put in here. So let me get some cleaning supplies. We will get all the oil taken off of our roof insert, and then I'll hit it with the DA, and I think we'll call this one a wrap. All right, so that is a wrap on this aluminum 2829 Ford Model A Coupe roof insert. So you can see it here. I've got it labeled for the front, what it is, and it's going to Jerry Walker at Sinister Hot Rods. So still got some streaks on it from the cleaner, the glass cleaner and stuff, but it's cleaned up real nice. And before I wrap this video up, I wanted to show you, the panel looks pretty flat through the camera. But I'm hoping you guys can see this just with a straight edge. Look at how much shape is in a Model A Coupe roof and roof insert. So even though it looks pretty flat, there's a lot of shape, and it's all compound shape that we put in with radial tooling on the power hammer. And hopefully I'll do a deeper dive on radial stretch in the future. I'm working on actually some metal shaping books that go into a deep dive for the guys that like print and that they can keep that reference material on hand. So that wraps this video up on power hammering out a 2829 Coupe roof insert. So thank you guys so much for checking out this video. If you guys haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. It's a big help in getting this channel out, and it helps the algorithms. And for everyone watching that is a subscriber, thank you guys so much. It's a huge help, and I do greatly appreciate all the support by being a subscriber, leaving comments, likes, and sharing the videos. So I'm gonna wrap this up. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you've made it here to the end. Drop in the comment section, let me know if you liked the information and this type of content, and make sure to become a subscriber, and we will catch you guys on the next one.